Many children grow up in well-structured houses but emotionally unstable environments where feelings are inconvenient and questions are actually interruptions, and the silence is mistaken for peace. A parent can be physically present and emotionally absent at the same time. So, working long hours does not automatically mean neglect, but emotional. Hello, beautiful family. Welcome home. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Victory TV. And if you're one of my returning subscribers, thank you for choosing to come back again to this space. This channel is not a trend, it's a home. And it's a home for people who are tired of shallow conversations, a home of people who are tired of pretending that life is simple to them when it's not. And here we think, we reflect together, we feel, and we even grow together. My name is Jay Victory, and I just want to say I want to thank God that life has placed children at the center of my calling. Through my work, I've spent years in children's homes, in schools, in juvenile institutions, and spaces where children are not just performing for adults but they are surviving adults. I've listened to children who speak fluently in silence. I've listened to children who know how to behave but do not know how to feel safely. And I've also listened to adults who are just still trying to make sense of the wounds that began before they could even name them. So, somewhere along this journey, children began calling me Mama. Not because I gave birth to them biologically, but it's because I stayed emotionally present. It's because I listened to them without rushing. It was also because I asked questions without judgment, and that is not a title I take lightly, but a responsibility I thank God for. So, this is episode 2 of the year 2026, and today's conversation is named Parenting Beyond Provision. In other words, I'm trying to say raising emotionally intelligent children. So, this is not a condemnation to any parent watching, it's not an attack again, it's just an invitation to expansion of how parenting should look like. Many parents were taught that love pattern is through sacrifice, that good parenting is measured by the school fees they paid, the food they put on table, and the roof overhead. But provision actually became it became the loudest language for them. So there is also another language that children speak, and this word is emotion. They really speak it fluently, and that language is mostly ignored, and the children who grow up materially supported, this word is basically ignored, and children basically grow up materially supported but emotionally underdeveloped. So I before I begin, I want to also remind you that I offer professional voiceover services, and I do it at a very good price. And I also do one-on-one mental wellness conversations for individuals who need a safe space and privacy to process life. You'll find the full details in the description. And coming back to our topic, this conversation is for parents who are raising children now, for adults who are going to be parents soon or in the future, and for grown-ups who are courageous enough to admit that some of their reactions today were learned in childhood. So today I want us to be quite honest, deep, and even very careful when handling this sensitive topic. And I'm going to talk about how provision looks like. So provision, it basically can build a house, but presence will build a home. And there is basically a difference between a house and a home. This is a language that children differentiate instinctively. So a house is basically a structure that has walls, furnitures, foods, and even it has schedules. But a home, it has emotional safety. Many children grow up in well-structured houses, but emotionally unstable environments where feelings are inconvenient, where questions are interruptions, and where silence is basically mistaken for peace. So a parent can be physically present and emotionally absent at the same time. So working hours, long hours, does not mean that it doesn't really mean neglect, but emotional unavailability always leaves in a mark. So children do not measure love by effort alone. They measure it by the access. When a child can really access your attention, when a child can really access your curiosity, when a child can really access your emotional warmth, they internalize that message, that connection, that really connection must be earned or either postponed. So long after childhood, this shows up in adults who struggle to ask for help, the adults who really minimize their needs, and for those who feel guilty, the adults who really feel guilty for wanting closeness. So a home is built. Actually, a home is built when a child feels that their inner world really matters just as much as their external world needs. You understand? So I'm also going to talk about the emotional intelligence that comes in when it comes to parenting. So emotional intelligence is just a skill of understanding before correcting. And many adults were raised in environments where behavior was addressed but emotions was mostly ignored. So correction came in quickly, understanding came in rarely. So emotional intelligence shifts the focus from asking, what did you do wrong, to what is happening inside you. So a child who throws tantrums may not be defiant as to how the role is described. They just may be overwhelmed. And a teenager who has chosen to withdraw may not be disrespectful as it is always termed, but it may be that they are confused, ashamed, or even afraid. So when parents rush to correct without understanding, children learn to suppress rather than processing. And over time, suppressed emotions do not disappear. They leak into anger, anxiety, addiction, or even emotional numbness, something I once spoke before. And teaching emotional intelligence is not about excusing bad behavior, it's about addressing the roots rather than trimming the branches. And when a child learns to identify and articulate feelings, they gain tools that many adults were searching for. So there is this thing that says that when parenting, I think if I'm to restructure it, now let's talk about parenting on autopilot. It mostly reproduces wounds and not wisdom. So most parents do not intentionally repeat harmful patterns, they inherit them unconsciously. The phrases you had growing up become the phrases that really rise in the moments of stress. The punishments that silenced you became the tools you reach to when you feel disrespected. And without reflection, parenting becomes a reenactment of unresolved childhood experiences, I mean. This is it's basically a quiet truth that many adults really avoid. Not everything that raised you held you in a way. And emotional intelligence requires the courage to pause and ask whether the method really produces fear or growth to you. So a child does not need a parent to be that perfect to them, but they just need a parent to be a reflective kind of a parent. So growth begins when a parent realizes that authority does not destroy when that authority does not destroy, and authority does not disappear when humility enters the room. So let's talk about how discipline, when it comes to parenting, should look like. There is this South African lady who said that discipline should shape character and not destroy dignity. Discipline that relies on fear produces compliance and not wisdom. And a child who behaves only when washed has not learned self regulations. Instead, they have learned self protection. Emotional intelligence discipline preserves dignity while addressing behaviors. It's mostly communicates that mistakes do not really erase the worth in someone, and many adults still associate correction with humiliation because that is how they learned that is how they learned on the term obedience, on how to obey. And mostly correction that shames teaches a child to hide and not to grow. Most parents will basically embarrass you in public so that they'll basically embarrass you in public because they feel like they're creating change in you. It's not growth. They're teaching you on how to hide. And a calm explanation reaches deeper than a raised voice ever. A calm explanation, it reaches deeper than when a raised voice would ever have corrected you. And when discipline is rooted in relationship, children internalize values rather than merely avoiding punishments. So I was talking about the words that keep on recurring when spoken. So words spoken become the voice inside a child, and children may really forget specific incidents, but they remember how language made them feel about themselves. Words spoken casually, repeatedly, or in anger can become internal narratives that shape identity. And a child who hears that they are stubborn may grow into an adult who fears feedback. So a child who really hears that they are dramatic may learn to distrust their emotions. This is power. Okay, this is power in spoken. This is power in a spoken language. And scripture reminds us that life and death resides in the tongue. So parents are often the first voice children internalizes. The emotional intelligence teaches children on restraint. It teaches them on intentionality and also repair, because apologies teaches accountability just as powerful as authority. You understand? So allowing children to experience discomfort builds their emotional muscles, and rescuing children from very unpleasant emotions may feel loving, but it can quietly weaken their capacity to cope. Frustration, boredom, and even disappointment and waiting are actually the emotional weight that strengthen resilience when carried appropriately. So a child who is never allowed to feel discomfort grows into an adult who panics when life becomes inconvenient for them. And emotional intelligence teaches parents to sit a child a child's discomfort without rushing to fix it instead, or maybe communicating. So you can as well teach them on you can as well affirm them. That is now where you tell them that they are capable enough and you're here for them. So this is just a balance of support and spaces. It's basically a balance of support and space that builds confidence that no lecture would ever do. So there is this thing that comes in when children learn emotional regulation by just watching how adults handle pressure. So children will study adults more than they listen to them. That is now where apprenticeship comes in. They observe how you respond when plans fail on your side, when money is tight, when stress enters your room, and even emotional intelligence is transmitted through modeling. And a parent who acknowledges stress without exploding teaches regulation. So a parent who admits mistakes teaches accountability to these kids watching them. And the scripture even says that it speaks of training a child in a way that they should go. And the training is demonstrated, it's always demonstrated, not just announced. Emotional maturity is caught before it's taught. And let's now come to where silence is sometimes a survival strategy and not a sign of peace. So, a quiet child is often praised as well behaved, but silence can be a shield. You understand? So, some children learn early that expressions invites punishments, or maybe it invites dismissal or ridicule. and they adapt by shrinking. So emotional intelligence asks parents to look beyond the bad behavior and ask whether a child feels safe enough to speak freely, and remember that a home where emotions are welcome may always feel messy, but a home where emotions were welcome may feel messy most of the times, but it's honest. So suppressed emotions do not really vanish, they wait for adulthood to resurface. And I'm going to talk about people always talk about raising boys and raising girls. I'm going to talk about raising boys separately and raising girls differently, according to the research I made. So, raising boys who are allowed to feel without, you need to raise boys who are really allowed to feel without losing strength. It's sad that the society has really made it a norm that boys or men should not be vulnerable. So many boys are emotionally restricted long before adulthood. They are taught that endurance, that they're taught on how to endure, but not on how to express toughness, but they're not on how to express. They're taught on toughness, but not tenderness. And emotional intelligence does not weaken boys. It basically it stabilizes them. A boy who who can name sadness does not need to express it through aggression. So strength is disconnected from empathy and it really becomes more dangerous. So teaching boys emotional awareness equips them to lead families, friendships, and even communicate with responsibilities rather than repression. So you need to teach men that they're also allowed to be vulnerable enough, that they are okay to cry. They shouldn't just be tough even when things inside them is not, when things are not running smoothly. They also need to be like vulnerable enough they can speak up. So teaching them this, it's totally responsibility to them. And now, when it comes to raising girls, I mean that you need to raise girls who really trust the inner voice and set boundaries. Most ladies out here don't know how to set boundaries. Most ladies out here do not know how to follow their inner voices. And many girls are socialized to prioritize harmony over honesty. They learn to be agreeable before they learn to be assertive with their words. And emotional intelligence actually teaches girls that their feelings are valid signals, not inconveniences. So a girl who trusts her voice becomes a woman who really trusts her judgment. Teaching boundaries early prevents them from burning out later on. So emotional awareness does not rebel, it is basically self-respect. And also, we can now generalize these by preparing children for a world that we cannot control. So, parents cannot eliminate pain, they cannot eliminate rejection, they cannot eliminate the loss from a child's future. You understand? But they can prepare children emotionally to face reality without losing themselves. Emotional intelligence equips children to navigate change. It equips them to navigate failure. It equips them to navigate the uncertainty with self-awareness. When the Bible scripture speaks of wisdom to us. It speaks about us crying out. It points to the discernment. So the ability to interpret life is basically accurate. So children who understand that their emotions are less likely to be ruled by them. And do not do just parenting in form of a legacy, but you can as well leave a very good legacy. So let's talk about now parenting in terms of the parenting as now a legacy. What really remains when your voice is gone as a parent? So long after your childhood ends, emotional memories really remain, and children remember that they remember how safe they felt, how mistakes were handled, how emotions were treated, and provisions may meet needs, but emotional intelligence shapes identity. So parenting beyond provision is not about being extraordinary, it's about being intentional. And the legacy you leave is not only what you gave, but it's it's who your child become because of how you love them or how you treated them or maybe how you trained them in their past. So let's look at the kind of legacy we are leaving behind. You understand? So when it comes to emotional safety, let's talk about the legacy we are leaving behind. And we've come to the end of today's topic. It was kinda a broad one. It was an emotional topic. It was one of the difficult topics to do. It was a request that I received from one lady from the Tax and Caicos who just asked me to speak about parenting, and yeah, I chose to speak about this. Thank you so much for trusting me with this topic. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Until next time, see you in our next video coming next week. Bye.